Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus back here with you on Wednesday, September 6th on behalf of Arcadia Economics. Today, a quick update video about Bitcoin, some of the other cryptos, which, if you've noticed, well, certainly they've had quite a volatile year in general. Bitcoin starting the year around $1,000. Then last week, almost reached 5,000, got up to 49 and change before it's around 4,600 today last I looked. And also as well some of the other cryptos such as Litecoin, which I actually did buy, I think I have about 25 Litecoins at this point. And it was interesting noticing how Bitcoin, which again, it's been a volatile year, had reached as high as 3,000 a couple months ago, then settled there for a while. Then it was almost as if it took a summer holiday, and then in the last couple of weeks has been rising again consistently. One of the things I noticed was Litecoin had kind of just been sitting there even as Bitcoin was going up. And certainly I think there's going to continue to be some sort of correlation with the cryptos in general. So I was watching Litecoin and it was trading around 45, 50 bucks for a while. And then about a week or two after Bitcoin started going up yet again, Litecoin last week basically doubled. Went from 45 to, I think it got as high as 92 last week. It's traded a little lower since then. But again, interesting. Again, the crypto market, a little bit newer to me. I've traditionally focused on gold and silver and just steering clear of stocks and bonds and real estate and some of the traditional markets. But it's fascinating watching the cryptos, seeing them trade higher, and continuing to think about why that's happening. Again, when you have any sort of move up in the stock market, that's all you hear about in the mainstream media, and how it's a great time to pile into stocks. Where you've heard very little about Bitcoin, at least if you're going through the traditional media sources, with save the exception being, you hear a lot about people saying, is Bitcoin in a bubble? I find it interesting how there's not as many people wondering whether stocks or bonds are in a bubble. And again, my basic metric, not that this tells the whole story, but a good starting point when you're looking at any asset and thinking, is this the beginning of a big move, or is it a bubble and it's about to crash lower? Certainly think about it, and if you know, write in and leave a comment below, but I'd be curious how many people actually know someone who owns a Bitcoin or any sort of crypto, which would really be the sign of a bubble when everybody owns it without having any idea even what it is, but just hearing the buzz and some of the mania, which certainly I don't think has happened or is even close to happening. I think I did hear a figure of the percentage of people that actually own a Bitcoin. It was well less than 1%. And that would be really the key sign of when everyone starts piling into something. Other than that, if it's something that nobody owns, it's harder for me to see the case as a bubble, especially given the context of the environment in which you're seeing these moves. Again, why are the cryptos, why this year, why in particular now are we seeing such stunning volatility? Yes, but in the end, significant moves and an explosion in price. I mean, it's been stunning to see an asset that is really thought of as a currency move that high. Perhaps really one of the clues is looking at the dollar. Again, there's a dollar index, which basically, if you Google the symbol DXY, you can take a look at that chart. Again, not really the best measure of the value of the dollar because you're measuring one paper currency against a bunch of the other paper currencies, which, are all inherently flawed and are printed to the point where they, in any almost sane world, you wouldn't you wouldn't think of these as a stable currency. Yet even as weak as and printed as some of the other currencies are, the dollar has lost about 10% of its value this year, somewhat quietly. You hear a lot again about the stock market and what the Fed is going to do, yet it seems to have gone somewhat under the radar that the world's reserve currency has lost 10% of its value, which is an enormous move for a currency. That's not supposed to happen. Of course, as we talked about yesterday, you have the U.S. Treasury Secretary advocating a soft dollar policy, essentially letting you know where he stands on any sort of financing or dollar-related issues, which, of course, is pretty much the similar mentality of the Fed, who actually prints the money. So, my best guess, and I think there's some truth to this, of why is that this is why the cryptos are moving up. Whether it's the political tension, the threats of war going back and forth between Trump and North Korea, or just are people finally realizing how insane this Wall Street Ponzi scheme has become, which again, what would you expect to see? If people are starting to lose faith or starting to notice that what we've been told is the safe haven asset or the flight to quality is really just another Wall Street whopper, which I would certainly say the dollar and stock and bond market have become. So it would certainly make sense to see money flow out of those assets and look for something that's, if you're of that perspective that the dollar's days are numbered, which certainly I am, okay, and you want to take your money out of the dollar, where do you put it? I would argue that what we're seeing in the cryptos is similar to what you would expect in gold and silver, with the caveat that, as we've discussed before, gold and silver, the banks can and do write tons of paper contracts that, you hear numbers north of 100 to 1 in terms of for how much, and for each piece of gold or silver, how many paper claims there are on it. So you can suppress the price of gold and silver. Bitcoin is not, you can't quite do it the same way. There's not a way now. Are there other ways to manipulate the market, or could they come out with some insane tax or say you're a criminal if you own Bitcoin? Or spread propaganda, which historically, when you look at some of these establishment U.S. institutions, has happened in the past. And so it's not as if there aren't things that the banks or whatever you want to call the forces that get involved in trying to suppress metals, I'm sure they would attempt to do similar activity in Bitcoin, but just from the nature of the product, you can't do that as directly. So the way I see it is that these price movements in Bitcoin and some of the other cryptos are a sign of what's happening, or the sign that we would be seeing in gold and silver, that match also what you're seeing in the dollar index, that people are realizing what's going on, whether this is leaving us on the verge of really a crash in the dollar, which I would maintain at some point literally has to happen. I mean, it just, in the same way the housing bubble eventually popped, at some point I expect the same thing to happen in the dollar, stock and bond bubbles. And whether this move in the cryptos is signifying that it's imminent or just that things are building, that seems to me the reason that we're seeing these moves. Certainly, if you have any other thoughts or ideas, or there's anything else you've been hearing, leave it in the comment below. I'd love to hear any alternate ideas or if you're feeling the same thing. But certainly that's what it appears to be to me, which in some ways is good news for gold and silver holders, because I think it's important to keep in mind that there are characteristics of certain asset class holders, which is not to say everybody who invests in Bitcoin or stocks is thinking the exact same way. Yet I would think, or I would say there's a degree to which people who are taking their money and investing in cryptos are often, maybe not always, but often in that same mindset or perspective as gold and silver. And you hear a lot of people, as they've made a lot of money in the cryptos, thinking, all right, how can I diversify this? It's gone up a lot. Maybe I want to leave some in, maybe take it out. And a lot of these folks who are familiar with the manipulation in the precious metals are saying, hey, this is a great place. These are trading at basically, keep in mind, the metals are trading at almost the cost to get them out of the ground. So there's just so many things in favor of gold and silver. The only question to me is what's the timeline of that. But again, just another force adding to gold and silver is that people are making a lot of money in the cryptos. I do believe we'll continue to see some of that money filter into gold and silver. So in either case, again, I think the price move is indicating what I've been talking about, what a lot of the other, precious metals analysts and folks that are in this whole circuit have been seeing, forecasting, and it's interesting to see this actual price activity take place, which to me is a confirmation of that. So again, take a look at the cryptos. Again, whether you decide to invest in them or not, the more I learn, the more I continue to feel this is going to be a part of our future, because it's really adding to it's building an infrastructure. So if you didn't have the dollar and you still wanted to have life continue and be able to trade and buy things, I mean, we're seeing a system being created to fill that need as we speak. So certainly a good thing to be learning about. A lot of great folks on YouTube. I like listening to Cliff High and Bix Weir. I know some people think, some people feel otherwise, although I've found them good sources of information to continue learning. Certainly encourage you to do the same, and leave your comments below of what's your take on the big moves in the cryptos. But exciting times. And certainly as a silver investor, it's nice to own something that has finally gone up in value. It's been a tough ride for precious metals investors the past couple years, although for what it's worth, everything that I see and continue to come across indicates that while there is a lot of manipulation going on in terms of things that eventually have to resolve, I don't see anything changing that. So as long as you're actually taking possession, you're not getting too mixed up in paper gold or silver, I think you're going to be good. So with that said, go out, enjoy your day. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again tomorrow.